Oh, it's horse beef, guys. What's going on, man? And today I want to do something a little different, something I've never done before, matter of fact, and that is build you UFC 317 from top to bottom. I want to go early prelims, main card, everything, and build, for me, the perfect card that is the right amount stacked and also realistic at the same time. So I notice a lot of like fantasy cards are usually pretty unrealistic and too stacked, like as if every card can be as stacked as UFC 300, but I feel like here I built a card that isn't exactly in the level of UFC 300, but pushes the boundaries a little bit, but a card that we could get nonetheless. I put a lot into these matchups. This also happens to be my application to be the UFC's new matchmaker because I feel like they've just been missing the mark a lot recently. So let's just get into it, man. The early prelims getting us started off. And, right off the bat, we have that quota fight. We need that one female fight on the card. Knowing the UFC, they would push this up, and this fight would be the main card opener for some DEI bullshit. But for me, man, Alice Ardalian versus Marnik Man, dude. This is a fucking fight of the year candidate. Prove me wrong on that, but you can't because it's just a factual statement. And it's as simple as that, man. These chicks are going to go... I'm just kidding, man. This fight fucking sucks, and it's literally just a placeholder because we all know that the UFC loves to shoehorn these women's fights in there. I believe both of these ladies are winless in the UFC, so just put them up against each other and then cut the one who loses and then cut the winner as well, and then we're good to go, man. And then we move on to Lucas Brzezinski against fucking Huggy Bear, man. Barnett. I know Barnett, he injured himself before his last fight and then got pieced up. I think it was by Nezuchukwu. I would personally predict Huggy Bear to win this one. At least I would hope so. But he seems to always let us down when it matters most. But yeah, this is just a fun little fight, I guess, just to get us started with the early prelims. Huggy Bear, he's kind of a fan favorite. He would get the people going, get the people a little hyped up during his walkout, and you know what? Get the vibes up. And then we get into the headliner for the early prelims. That is Stuart Nickel against Dong Hun Choi. Now, Dong Hun Choi is undefeated. Stuart Nickel was undefeated before his last fight. They both, I believe, have only fought once in the UFC. Dong Hun Choi, I think, only in the Contender Series final or whatever it was. I don't know. I remember him knocking out his last opponent with a nasty right overhand. And I say just put these two up against each other, both, relatively uninitiated. Dong Hun Choi with a good start to his UFC career. Nickel with not quite the same, but didn't look too bad. But since 2025 is the year of quote-unquote fraud checking and undefeated fighters losing their O, how poetic would it be if Nickel, who just lost his O, took the O off of Dong Hun Choi? I think this fight makes sense, and that does conclude the early prelims here. No, fuck, now we're cooking, baby. We got Muslim Salikov against Nico Price opening up the prelims here. I think that's a fun fight, right? Nico Price, I don't know what to make of the dude. I really don't. He's not very good in my opinion. I think this is a layup win for Muslim Salikov. I think he wins this fight guaranteed unless the age finally catches up to him. But I'm a huge fan of Muslim Salikov. The king of Kung Fu is my father. I've said it on multiple occasions. I love watching him fight, and I pick him every single time. I picked him actually in his last two fights, I think, against Ponzinibbio and whoever he wheel kicked, Song Kenan, right? I pick him every single time. What do you got to say about that, right? The guys who come around this channel talking, oh, you hate Dagestanis. What do you have to say about that, man? I'm a huge Muslim Salikov fan. So talk shit now, baby. Talk shit now. You simply can't do it anymore. But then we get Barboza versus Duho Choi. Now, listen to me. This is a dream matchup for me. I'm a huge fan of both men, so I don't want to see either of these dudes get put out cold. But the reason why I put this matchup together, it makes sense, right? Duho Choi is a little bit further down. Like he's not ranked in the top 15, but both guys are kind of like fringe ranked fighters in a way. And I just feel like stylistically, this is a masterpiece of a fight. The kickboxing of Barboza and the boxing of Duho Choi going at each other. Maybe Duho Choi mixes in the wrestling, and I think he would probably win this fight. I don't love it for Barboza, just considering the momentum of both men. But if you've seen Barboza recently, he's looking like he just started a new steroid cycle. So maybe we get some 40-year-old prime version of Edson Barboza against Duho Choi. But this fight is a recipe for just sheer violence. Prove me wrong on that one, but yes, I would still probably pick Duho Choi, but holy shit, what a fight to have on prelims. And then Neil Magny against Brian Battle, dude. Neil Magny, let's see if Brian Battle can get past that test. Like, I don't understand how Neil Magny continues picking up wins. I know he was just sparked out by Prates, so maybe that's the straw that broke the camel's back. Maybe now Magny will stop fucking fraud checking so many fighters. And I don't really know what to make of Bryan Battle altogether. I think he's pretty good. He's, a good gas tank. He's gritty, good volume puncher. But at the same time, I can see Neil Magny like taking him down and like choking him out or some shit. But I would still probably pick Bryan Battle. But this is a fun matchup on paper. And then just knowing how much the UFC loves to just milk every last drop out of Tai Tuivasa, despite the fact he's on like a 28 fight losing streak right now. The UFC will not cut him, and then you have the new up-and-comer in Thaleson Teixeira. I think this fight makes a lot of sense. It would be fun for about 2 minutes, maybe at best, because someone's getting knocked out here. My guess would be that Tai is the one on the receiving end of said knockout. And that really just comes down to the physical advantages that Thaleson Teixeira has. He's like 6'7", lean, long, and he's a good, powerful striker. While Tai Tuivasa, yeah, he has power in those hands. I just don't see how he touches Thaleson Teixeira. He's just a tubby, overweight, fat, fucking middleweight at the end of the day, and he's going to get put out, but the UFC still will not cut him and will milk him and give him about fucking 7 more fight night main events, despite the fact that he'll be on like a 36 fight losing streak at that point. But let's now move on to the main card, the real meat and potatoes. Oh, and getting us started off with the main card, we have Kyler Phillips versus Marcus McGee, both men ranked 12 and I believe 14 respectively. Fun stylistic matchup here. Kyler Phillips more leans on his striking, very, very creative. I believe trains with Sean O'Malley and his team, so he has that similar type of fighting style that you would expect him to have. And then Marcus McGee, he's a bit more clean, a bit more technical, and in my opinion, just quite a bit better on top of that. And I think Marcus McGee would end up beating Kyler Phillips. I don't think he'd finish him though, if especially because it's just a 3-round fight. But I would expect him to piece up Kyler Phillips. But both men would have their moments, and this would be a fun fight because both guys like to throw a little mustard in there, a little style, a little spice in there. They're both very fun strikers to watch. They don't exactly stick to the basics a lot of the time. Like I would recommend watching Marcus McGee's finish over. I'm blanking on who it was, but he lands like a wheel kick and then follows up with a left hand and some shit like that. Listen, man, the guy is really good. I think he's actually more of what people were expecting Kyler Phillips to be. And I think he'd beat Kyler, but this fight would no doubt be extremely entertaining while it's going on. Then we have Gamrot versus Ludovic Klein. Now, I juggled with this matchup many times. Originally, I had Fiziev going up against Ludovic Klein up until we had the announcement that he's stepping in to fight Justin Gaethje. Then I had Drew Dober, but then I just recently noticed that Ludovic Klein actually called out Gamrot. Gamrot seems relatively desperate to get a fight. So will he fight an unranked guy, Ludovic Klein? Maybe he would. I think he has the nickname of the gamer, right? So he's a game-ass fighter, presumably so. So would he take this fight? It's a dangerous one for him. It's a clash of styles. Ludovic Klein, great hips on the guy. I know how that sounds, but I hope you know what I mean here. Great takedown defense, gets those hips down extremely quickly, and he's very good on the feet. Very good. One of the best strikers at 155, right? And 155 has some elite strikers, for UFC caliber, like UFC standards, has some of the best strikers in the UFC right now. And Ludovic Klein is up there with some of the best. He's very good. So I don't actually know what I would go with here if Gamrot's able to take down Ludovic Klein, grind a couple of rounds off him. But Ludovic's just so hard to get down in the first place. But maybe if he is able to get him down, maybe he grinds him and then just works his way to a decision. Otherwise, I could see Ludovic Klein potentially finishing him, if not having those moments that secures him 2 rounds to 3 potentially. But this fight is very intriguing from a stylistic perspective. Then we get Volkan Ozdemir against Mirzakhanov, both big power punchers. Volkan Ozdemir has huge power in that right hand. Mirzakhanov has a huge power in that left hand. Let's see what happens, right? It's a collision course. I would personally choose Mirzakhanov here. I think he's a bit cleaner, a little bit more precise, and Volkan Ozdemir loves to keep that head on the center line with his chin way out there while he's throwing shots, and I could see Mirzakhanov just punishing him for it and sparking him out cold. And then we have Robert Whittaker versus Cal Baralho. And I know some people are calling for Whittaker versus Strickland. Listen, I don't even care to see it, man. I really don't care to see that fight anymore. I really don't. I think that fight would be kind of boring in the end. But also, like, Strickland, I think after these last couple of title shots, man, just give him someone lower down in the rankings, like someone who's maybe like just outside the top 5 or something, just to give him a little test. Because I think Whittaker versus Cal Baralho stylistically would be a lot of fun. And this is a serious test for Cal Baralho. Whittaker's by no means washed. He's by no means a gatekeeper at all at this point. But he is the perfect litmus test for these high-level middleweights, right? If they beat Whittaker, they seem to be able to go on to become champion. So let's see if Cal Baralho has that. He's like the highest ranked fighting nerd. He's gotten the furthest out of all the fighting nerds. Although I think he's the worst out of the fighting nerds. Obviously, I'm not referring to Bruno Brazil, right? I'm not referring to Bruno Brazil, believe me. But I still think that he has the potential. He's showing improvements fight over fight. So it's really hard to judge him and pick a winner in this one. Honestly, it's very hard to pick a winner. And I won't, because it's just that close on paper. But at the end of the day, I wouldn't be surprised that if this fight was made, that it was like at best like a plus 120 for either man on the odds. But yeah, now let's get into the last two fights of the card. I think I will have no debates about either of these. Come on now. Imagine this card for International Fight Week. Islam and Ilia Topuria headlining. Umar versus Peter Yan co-main, because it looks to me, at least I'm not too sure if Dana's words are to be taken seriously, but he is seriously suggesting that the people want to see Sean O'Malley versus Merab too. So I have no doubt that we're going to get that, right? As unfortunate as it is, as undeserving as it is for Sean O'Malley to get the rematch against Merab, it probably will happen, just knowing how Dana White feels about Sean O'Malley, considering that his perceived quote-unquote star power is being shoved down our throat every single chance they get. Of course, he will get the fight against Merab, and it seems like Merab wants it too. So this is the fight that makes sense, man. Umar versus Peter Yan. Super high-level skills on both men. Although, listen to me, man. You're going to call me a Dagestani hater once again, but Peter Yan is the perfect style to completely melt and finish Umar Nurmagomedov. I don't see what Umar does to Peter, in all honesty. He's so much worse on the feet. He's shown that he doesn't have a great gas tank, and he doesn't even have the grappling advantage over Peter. Peter is one of the best grapplers in the fucking sport. I think people just look at his boxing and his overall striking game and think, wow, he's one of the best strikers. But he's also one of the best grapplers. His takedown setups are far more high level, far more elite, and far more varied than Umar. So if he did want to go and try and take down Umar Nurmagomedov, I think he would actually have a lot of success with it. And he has some of the best takedown defense. He stuffed how many takedowns from Merab? He stuffed quite a bit of takedowns. And considering the sheer volume in which Merab was shooting them at Peter, it was a very impressive display, despite the fact that he got fucking dog walked by Merab. And oh god, but I love Merab now, so I'm okay with it. Whatever. I just don't see a path to victory in this fight for Umar, especially in a 5-rounder. I believe Peter Yan melts him and then finishes him in the 4th or 5th. That's just the way I see it, man. And like, of course, I'm biased, being a massive Peter Yan fan and apparently an Umar mega hater, which isn't exactly the case either. I just hold every fighter to the same standard. But yeah, this is not a good matchup for Umar, but nonetheless, one of the most stylistically perfect matchups that the UFC can put on for us. These dudes would put on a show for as long as Umar can last until he gets melted and finished. He would put on a show, I believe, at the very least, and this would be an awesome fight, dude. Awesome fight. And I don't even think I need to speak at length about Islam versus Ilia Topuria, because you guys were already expecting that to be the main event, I'm sure. This fight is bananas. Like I said about Umar versus Peter, that fight honestly probably contains a higher level of skill than this main event does, in my personal opinion. I know that Islam is pound for pound number one, and Ilia is right behind him, right? Well, not exactly right behind him, but you know what I mean. He just knocked out two of the greatest featherweights of all time. But this fight would be incredible. Of course, I've already spoken about it at length. I think Ilia Topuria has a massive advantage on the feet. And I think some of the lazy clinch attempts as Islam starts to fade would get him hurt, man, because on the break, Ilia's cracking him, and this does seem to be a hole I've noticed in a lot of fighters from that camp. I even noticed it with Usman Nurmagomedov against Paul Hughes. As he started to fade and trying to close the distance and just reach into clinch Paul Hughes, Paul was able to land big shots on the chin, on the body. Same thing happened with Dustin Poirier against Islam. Every time Islam would start lazily reaching into clinch, man, Dustin Poirier would either just lift him and shuck him off or just punish him with body shots. Like, they didn't really affect Islam necessarily, but the openings were there, and Dustin Poirier was able to take them. And I think a fighter like Ilia Topuria, you give him those kinds of openings, and bad things happen, and there will be dire consequences. And I believe that will be the story of this fight. But of course, like, I would be silly to suggest that Islam is to be written off here. This fight on paper is as close to a 50-50 as things get for me. They really do. Like, it's that close. This fight is just razor thin, and obviously I want Ilia to win because I'm a pretty big Ilia Topuria fan, but I'm also a fan of Islam Makhachev's, and it's not lost on me of how big of a win this actually would be for his legacy, despite all of the detractors out there who say, oh, he only beat featherweight or fucking featherweights, this and that. Fuck what those people have to say. This is a massive legacy win, and don't let half-wits convince you that this is more of a win for Ilia than it is for Islam. No, this is the biggest fight for both men, 100%. This is the modern-day Khabib versus Conor McGregor, and it's not a matter of if we're going to get it, it's a matter of when, and I can only assume that UFC 317 for International Fight Week will be the card that this fight is put on, would be bananas, and if we get a card that's even comparable, like 50% comparable to this card that I put up here, I think we're still in for a great event at the end of the day. But if we get a card that's on the caliber of this one that I put together here, man, we're eating real good in 2025, and we already are eating pretty good in 2025 considering the announcements for UFC 314 and all that. But just imagine this card, like from top to bottom, as far as just like banger fights. Like I really went in there and tried to match up some like serious stylistic like fun fights. I tried to do that here, and I hope I succeeded. I hope you guys agree. But if you disagree, let me know in the comments section below any fights that you'd prefer to replace this guy or that guy, or any opponents that you'd rather see fight this guy, or you know what I mean. Just let me know any feedback. Agree or disagree does not matter, and I appreciate you watching. I'll see you on the next one.